Good evening, everyone. In compliance with the Open Public Meetings Act, the notice requirements have been satisfied. The meeting dates for the year are confirmed at the annual meeting, are posted on the public bulletin board in the lobby of the Municipal Center, and published in the record within the first 10 days of the new year. Just a reminder, this is a combined meeting, as all our meetings seem to be lately. We start with a work session, then we close that out, and we go to a public session, a public meeting, at which time public comment will be taken. So we'll start now with, we have two items on to be considered. The first is the annual, I think this is the third year, more than that?
Might even be fourth.
Fourth year of the state-required 2017 Best Practices Inventory. And I will tell you this from talking to other mayors, we are pretty much ahead of the curve here. Most towns have a very difficult time getting to where they have to get. Theoretically, if you don't, what is it, 85% you need to get state aid?
Yes.
Okay, so, you know, you have to have 85% yeses. Out of those, you know, there's certain items that may not apply to a particular municipality, they don't count. And every year we seem to manage to do it, and that's a credit to Jewel and Susan, for the most part, who keep us towing the line. Jewel, do you want to go over this, or?
Let's see, if you'll scroll down to, I believe it comes off as page 9 of 10.
Item 9. Right?
Item 9. You'll see, as the mayor indicated, that we're in very good shape. Of the 25 questions, we have 20 yeses, which puts us at the 96% range. We have 1 no, and we have 4 not applicable. What the state has done is, over the past couple of years, they've been tweaking the worksheet, and they have made some very specific requirements and rules as to questions that you can ask, that you can answer as not applicable. So those would be things like, for instance, it'll ask if you have a public utility, which we don't. So for us, that would be not applicable. So there are 4 of those types of questions. But essentially, as the mayor said, we've actually always been a little bit ahead of the curve. Over the past, I think in the first 2 years that the Best Practices Survey came into effect, we actually passed some resolutions and ordinances to improve our position. And that's something that every community has the ability to do. We passed a resolution with respect to training for our elected officials. We've been fortunate in that we have always maintained control over major issues such as payouts, large payouts for accrued sick and vacation time. We didn't allow that even prior to the best practices coming out. So we're in very good shape. And as you can see at the bottom also, that we're required to basically certify that the answers that we give are 100% accurate. Myself, Susan, and Lizette. And
can I ask you two questions, please? Question number 2 is: has your municipality adopted a written vehicle? And if we have vehicles that are associated with specific persons and they use them at home, we do a W-2. For example, I'm just need to understand, Chief Chamberlain, he has a car that is basically he's taking home and coming with a. Is he basically getting a W-2 for the use?
Public safety vehicles are exempt.
Public safety vehicles are exempt.
Under the IRS rules.
Under the IRS rule, because that's what it says now.
And they are encouraged not to use them for personal use. However, we have to keep in mind that as first responders, if they're at the supermarket or they're somewhere else and there's a call,
yeah,
it's handy for them not to have to go home and get the vehicle,
No,
so.
that's what I was saying, because we have also, Tony has a car, and that's just, those are public safety cars,
Yes.
yes? All right, so now the last one, it's pretty much the question number 25. And I need to understand a little bit. Employee personnel manuals basically, it's 24, that for employees covered by a collective bargaining, it's the elimination of longevity award bonuses or payment for employees hired, We still have steps, which is basically a longevity increases according to how many years you have.
But that's not defined as longevity.
That's what we need to understand. If steps are not defined as longevity,
Their pay
what-
structure, their compensation.
but that's what it says over here, compensation based on longevity and bonuses based on that. So that's what I wanted to understand that for sure, because we do have contracts that there are payments and bonuses for employees specifically based on the fact that they have certain number of years with the services.
But the way the question is phrased, and you have to be very precise with their language, has your municipality eliminated it? And the answer is yes, we have. Since 2011, no new employees are eligible for longevity.
But the new employees that are hired by either DPW or the police department will have the steps that are associated.
But steps,
Yes, but Max,
that's not
just-
longevity.
That's what we need to understand.
So longevity was basically when you retired, you got an extra check.
Okay.
Okay, based on,
It's terminal.
excuse me, terminally. So
All right. Would you please guys tell it?
Longevity is what Max creates here at.
longevity is about the distance in time that you're serving. The steps,
Duration, yeah.
duration in time. The steps are about, the pay increases that we agree to in the contracts every year or every 2 years. So that this is not about the steps, this is strictly about longevity.
That's
Okay.
their base pay.
Right.
That's two separate definitions.
Longevity
really
is
two
added
separate
onto the
things.
base
Thank you.
pay.
I
Somebody
don't
qualified.
want to beat a dead horse, but would you just want to go over, we got one no.
Yeah, I was just looking at
Would
that.
you like to explain where we are in that? Because I think we're making progress. Am I right in assuming that by next year, if the question is worded exactly the same, we'll have a yes there?
Well, we're trying to get it to a yes. The purchase orders seem to be ongoing, and it's a learning issue, basically. So I think that I was going to do a presentation to some of the department heads and some of the staff to help them to obtain additional information on how they should go about purchasing, especially with the new system. So we've improved, but a little more improvement still needs to take place. So by next year, I'm hoping that that does become a no.
Great.
Oh, yeah.
And I'd like to add
Yes.
something else. I mean, a yes, I'm sorry. And if you look at, to speak to what we were talking about being ahead of the game, let's see. On number, if I can find it, number 13. We did this before, this is a new question, and we did this before the best practices came out. We rolled our bands into a bond and permanently financed them.
Okay.
Currently, we have no bands outstanding.
The only other item on to be considered is a request for a holiday craft and vendor sale at the senior center. I think we'll give them a big yes on that.
Yep.
Anybody have a concern about that? Okay, the administrator's report, Jewel.
Came fast. All right. In terms of things that we're currently addressing, there was a request for the amounts of balances in the open space trust based on the fact that we have been anticipating and considering some additional commitments. So if you could scroll down to page 3. There's a chart there. I've used a lot of charts this time around since we were dealing a lot with money and timeframes. So this is just a quick overview of what we have committed to over the past 3 years. In 2016, we passed an ordinance appropriating $100,000 out of the open space fund for Oresco Park. We're now in the process of implementing that project. We have been discussing the replacement of municipal turf with our borough engineer. The cost, the amount of money that was originally placed in the 2017 capital was $420,000, and we knew at the time that that did not take into account all of the processes that would be involved, all of the cost. As you recall, Andy Hippolyte attended 2 meetings. He's given us additional information about costs that we can anticipate. And so the total cost, at the present time, the total cost estimate is $750,000, and $100,000 of that amount basically is for an additional layer of protection that was discussed in terms of protecting safety and protection from the rubber. So we're looking at $330,000 in 2017, and then for 2018.
Just one second.
Sure.
We have never agreed or discussed that this 330,000 will be out of the.
Yes, we have.
Yes.
No, I
Yeah,
don't
We
think so.
discussed it, but I don't remember approving
Well,
it.
we first of all, we haven't taken the money yet.
That's
Yeah,
why
but
it
we
says.
didn't approve.
That's why it
We
says.
didn't have an
that's why it
approval.
says
I don't think that the council has agreed to that.
We-
I don't
Yes, we
remember.
have.
We
agreed
have
to
not
that.
taken a vote, yes or no, on it, but that
Yeah.
was what the consensus at the table was. That's the direction we were heading.
Right.
That I
So-
That was,
Here.
that decision was made when we already have appropriated more than half of the cost.
I
No.
mean,
So
in
wasn't it-
2017, the budget, we appropriated over
Okay.
$400,000.
Peter, you were
for
not,
this.
we basically appropriate $400,000 from the capital cost, and we are to appropriate another $400,000 from the same capital cost. We have never agreed.
Wait a second. Why do you say things that are just off the charts?
No, it's basically.
Nobody said.
We can ask,
Well,
we
no,
can
no,
ask
no.
the council.
Nobody at this table ever said we're going to take another $400,000.
330.
Yeah, but we didn't say we're taking that out of capital. That
No,
was-
we didn't, it says we're gonna take it out of the open
That's
space.
what's projected. We haven't done it yet. The only thing that we've done so far.
Well, we
if
need
you
to
look-
discuss it
if
now
you
if you're
look- if you
talking
look
about
at-
that.
If you look at the chart,
Yeah.
the chart says Oresco Park ordinance. That means we voted on it and it's done.
Yeah.
Yes, sure, we did that.
The second item says pending, which means we haven't voted on it. Nobody's claiming that we voted on it and that it's a done deal. It's
Still an
pending.
open issue.
It's an
It's an
open
open
But-
issue, as
so-
is the third item, which we just started talking about the last meeting, was the Fister's Pond. So,
So just back to the turf, like, the general concept was we budget half of it in 2017 and the other half in 2018.
Yeah, that's right.
Right.
correct.
So
And,
no vote has been taken, so
okay, well.
this is going to be an issue for, because we're not committing to this now, this is an issue for the budget in the
But
spring.
it shows as if it was, it's like getting a little bit pregnant, a little bit more pregnant. It's out of the,
Well,
open fund.
The next April,
That's right.
you have to have the courage of your convictions to decide how you're going to vote.
Exactly.
Correct. It's a lot to stick in the capital.
That's right. You know, we already just, you chose to bond for the parking lot. Now you're going to bond for something else. You're going to put the bonds right through the roof, and our bond rating is going to go down.
Then
But-
maybe
but
we
the-
should postpone
We
it.
should do have a-
Maybe we should postpone that.
Postpone what, Max?
Municipal turf.
We've been told at this table that the field is beyond its useful life.
Yeah.
So basically what you're saying, shut down the field.
Nobody said to
Can I
shut
Well,
it
but
down.
that's what you'd have to do, because the field needs to be
This
replaced.
is a little bit of an esoteric argument because we don't have a budget yet and we don't know what we're dealing with.
Yeah.
Right, so we're months away from having this particular,
Well, but Mark, if you recall, we already have a schedule in place so that the turf will be replaced for the fall season next year.
right, understood.
Okay? So
Right.
I'm not suggesting that we've come to any final determinations, but we do have a schedule, and in order to keep that schedule, at some point in time, we have to make a decision.
Oh, agreed. I completely agree with that. And my vote is to continue to do this turf field next year, no question about it. All I'm saying is right now is we're having an argument without the benefit of next year's numbers in front of us. That's what I'm suggesting.
The question was, right, the takeaway was, what would our balance look like if everything that has been under discussion or consideration was incorporated? And so as you can see, we would still have an estimated balance in excess of $1 million, and that does not include the full amount of what we would also have coming in additionally.
Okay, swim
All right.
club parking lot resurfacing.
Swim club parking lot resurfacing, if you'd like, you can just go down to the next chart. We have, after much discussion, it was decided that we would bond for this. The legislation to initiate that action is on tonight's agenda. There is a resolution to amend our capital ordinance to incorporate this project, and we have an ordinance that would permit us to undertake the actual bonding. So it's broken down very succinctly, so you can see that the total project cost estimate is $400,000. That includes the estimate for the construction work as well as the associated bonding and advertising costs. You see the timetable for the actions that would need to take place. And as we just discussed, we were working backwards. It was agreed that this work needed to be done in April during the time that the school is closed for spring break. That is still our intent. You will note that the last line, alternate construction work period, was a recommendation by the borough engineer that if for any reason we could not get the work accomplished in April, that we should have an alternate that we can include in the bid specification, because it would probably change the overall cost, and we need to be prepared for that. But obviously our goal is still to have it done in April of 2018. The next chart below that is the municipal field turf replacement schedule, which we also just talked about. There is a brief narrative earlier on in the memorandum. Here, once again, we're working backwards. We indicated, it was agreed that this work needed to be completed by August, but so it would be ready for the next school year. And so here you have the schedule of what it would take to accomplish that. As we've just discussed, we have $420,000 currently appropriated in the capital fund. This project is eligible for open space, and as we just agreed, it is still an open issue as to whether or not the 330 is appropriated in the capital, or whether it's taken out of the open space fund by ordinance.
Jewel, quick question.
Sure.
How long does the construction take? Is it 2 weeks, 3 weeks, 4 weeks?
I think Andy indicated 2 to 3 weeks.
2 to 3 weeks?
Yes.
Okay.
Will that affect any of the summer programs out there?
We don't have too much in the way of summer
No.
programs there. The teen center occasionally uses the field, but that's something we can deal with. There aren't really a lot of programs in the summer.
Yes, agreed. Okay.
You want to do any of those updates?
Let's see. I also want to just touch base, if you go to the next chart, everything seems to work itself out with the chart. We talked briefly about the Safe Routes to School grant. As you recall, the engineer, in a draft memo, because nothing is final at this point, has indicated that given the way that this grant has progressed, or quite frankly not progressed, and given some additional administrative rules and regulations that have been imposed, they suggested that we might want to consider turning back the grant. It's not just a matter of additional rules, but I don't think it was really as clear as it was in our discussion with the Board of Education, that timing is also a major factor here. As you can see, I've just indicated what some of the major steps have been over the course of the life of this grant. And essentially, it comes down to the fact that in over 3 years since we submitted the grant, it has still not been formally awarded and implemented by NJDOT. We presented a very succinct and concise status update at our joint use meeting with the Board of Education, but they honed in pretty clearly on the issue of timing and the fact that the issues that were, the safety issues that we were trying to alleviate are not getting any better.
Is this specifically Stillman School?
Yes, it is.
And there's two issues, as I understand it: the sidewalk problem
The sidewalk.
on Hamilton Place, and then the parking opportunity on Windsor.
This was for Windsor Road, was it not? It wasn't
Well,
for
no, it's Stillman School.
Yes, but there's Hamilton Place is on one side of the school.
And Windsor.
Windsor's on the
I
southern side.
believe this was for Windsor Road, a sidewalk
Windsor
on
Road
Windsor
side,
Road
right.
and expanding the parking spaces
On Windsor.
on Windsor Road, but, Hamilton Place has nothing to do with this. I mean, that's a separate issue.
How much was this grant for?
146,000.
Okay, you just look at from your point of view of a Tenafly resident and ask them, hey, should we just proceed and forget about the 140,000 and you pay for that, or we just wait to get this one, make sure that you can, what would they care about?
Well, one of the things that you need to take into account is that no grants are awarded cash prior to the work being done. It's
Yeah.
it's always on a reimbursement basis.
And it's a
So-
matching grant.
And it's a matching. Well, in any event, we would still have to raise the money in capital, even if we will ultimately be reimbursed. That's what happens with all of our grants.
Which is okay, as long as we basically get the money back.
True,
There
but
is no logical argument to basically stick the residents with 140,000 if we can get something done to get that grant, even if it comes a year after or a year and a half after,
It's already been more than 3 years.
and 3 years after. If we can recover it, it's fine.
All right, so just some backup for clarification for a second. So, I know the whole sidewalk thing on Hamilton's a separate discussion, but typically the borough pays for the installation of new sidewalks if a decision is ever made to do that. This parking, isn't the parking on the school property typically paid for by the Board of Education?
Correct, and that's one of the things that we need to clarify. This is Board of Education property.
So why are we involved?
The reason that we're involved is because the Safe Routes to School grant program
Municipal.
requires the municipality to apply in conjunction with the Board of Education. So even though these grants are always applied to, or generally applied to school properties, it's still the borough that DOT recognizes as the lead agency.
Okay.
So in terms of dealing with the costs, number one, it's been almost 4 years. We can't even necessarily guarantee that the work as it was scoped 4 years ago is still exactly $146,000. So that's number one. Number two is that we would still have to appropriate it, and there is still a decision to be made as to whether or not we want the board to participate in that cost up front, or whether or not the borough wants to take on the whole
Joel, I
amount.
think what members of the council don't understand is why we are turning that down. What's the harm in just moving this project along, paying for it, because we have to pay for it anyway, and leaving that grant out there on the chance that
Yes.
we get the money?
Because if you undertake the project before you have a contract, then you're not eligible for the
Okay,
grant.
so there's the answer. And Max, you shouldn't be sitting here saying there's no logical argument against your stance,
Absolutely.
okay? Well,
I mean, I don't
so
understand what
do you
you
mean?
said.
basically, what-
I didn't
basically,
understand this.
let me phrase it, okay?
The program
So
is stalled.
You cannot move this process along. In other words, we all understand that the borough, or the combination of the borough and the Board of
And the board.
Ed, have to pay for this project, and then we get reimbursed. However, if we start the project before there's a contract, we don't get reimbursed.
Contract for the grant?
No, a contract with.
For the grant,
for-
yes.
For the grant.
Yes.
Okay.
With the
We've been
DOT.
we've been waiting for
Correct.
this contract for 3 years. Okay,
Their
we may
contract.
wait another 3 years, which means this work is not going to get done. So what the administrator is suggesting, in addition, they put some onerous requirements into this process, such as if you're going to do this project, you're theoretically supposed to hire a full-time employee to be basically the clerk of the works. So, what is a full-time employee gonna cost? Even if it's, you might gonna say it's only for a month or two. But that's just the tip of the iceberg. In our professional's opinion, our engineer and our administrator, they feel we would be better served by just moving this project along and paying for it, rather than not doing this project on the premise that maybe at some point in the future, we'll get a commitment. Well, basically what we're doing is we're waiting for a commitment from DOT, and we've been waiting for over 3 years for it. It's not coming.
Does the Board of, I'm sorry, Shama, please.
My question is, let's take this position that, okay, we'll move ahead. But the parking lot situation, that's Board of Education property. We're not
Well,
responsible for that.
Understood.
If we-
The
if we
project
dec-
could be rescoped. Yeah.
If we decide to move ahead without the grant, we discuss this at joint use, and we'll figure out how we're gonna partner with them on this project.
Correct.
And anything that's discussed at joint use goes back to the Board of Ed, goes back to the mayor and council for approval. So it's not like something's going to be agreed upon without the vote of the 7 of us.
So I just have 2 last questions. Is the Board of Ed fully aware of the status of this whole situation?
Yes, at
Yes.
the last joint use meeting, we discussed it at length.
Okay, which I missed that particular meeting. So where do we go from here? Are we gonna discuss the joint use, or?
No, where we go from here is, we need this body, the governing body, to make a decision whether we remain in limbo, not turn back the grant, or do as our professionals suggest, turn back the grant so we can move this project along. Once we decide what we're gonna do, we'll bring it back to the Board of
Well, I have a
Education.
question. Why do we have to
Turn down.
down the grant
We
while
don't
we
have to.
decide the option B?
Because-
Can't we discuss
because
with the,
we can, if, the minute we start this project, if we haven't got
no,
the
I'm not saying
approval-
start the project, Mayor. I'm saying start a discussion with through the joint use to decide what would be the option, so we know the cost, we know what's happening. This
you-
can stay in limbo. If it's going to stay in limbo for another 3 years, surely that won't interfere with a discussion.
So what you're suggesting
So
is
we
we
at
go
least
back,
have a, realize what our A and B
we
options
go
are.
back to joint use and ask them, all right, if we
This-
decide to turn back the grant, the approximate cost of this project is $280,000, how are we gonna split it?
Exactly.
And then we can come back and decide.
That's
whether-
what I feel.
Exactly.
At least we
Exactly.
have
We know the-
option
You know,
A and B.
I would recommend
agree.
not even waste time with the joint use. Perhaps the administrator send a letter to the superintendent or the president of the Board of Ed and suggest, and say, look, if this is the story, unless you want this project potentially delayed for an unlimited time,
Unknown amount of time.
an
So
unlimited amount of time,
Jewel,
we
why don't you write
recommend
a
that we
letter
pull
to
this.
Yaz
Just
or
let's
to?
Yeah.
There are 2 options,
to Dr.
wait
Gordon.
Right.
or proceed.
Parallel
And if you
options.
proceed, what are the costs that you will cover? That's very simple.
I mean, I frankly think that the Board of Education can make the call on whether they wanna wait or
Yeah.
not, because
Yeah,
it's
that's
just
fine.
safety of
Exactly.
their kids.
That's what
Frankly,
I'm saying, you have options to wait,
Yeah,
or you have the
because
option to
those were the
proceed.
issues that they raised.
But, once again, we're not being the bad guys here. It's been
No.
3 years, and the sense is it may be another 3 years.
It's the decision of the board.
Okay,
It-
what's next?
Just a few updates. Well, we did Safe Routes to School, senior transportation program. We had a preliminary report that we presented on September 26th, and as we indicated, we did update that report so that we included all of the relevant data for operations through the end of September. We gave a presentation to the Senior Services Committee on October 2nd, and let's see, we included additional information. And in terms of recommendations that we made as a result of the basically 4-month trial period that we've been in, we're recommending that the daily bus service be expanded by 1 hour per day from 3 o'clock to 4 o'clock. We are also proposing, although we were not very successful in any of the 3 group trips that were organized and very well advertised, we do think that people would still be interested in specific types of trips. And in this case, because we have the holidays coming up in December, we'd like your authorization to plan for 2 shopping trips.
Just a quick question.
During the holiday season.
Where does this leave us from a budgetary perspective if we're expanding the service 1 hour a day and these 2 trips? We have the money to do that?
Yes, we do. The budgets for the bus drivers could absorb this
Okay.
without any.
All right.
Just to mention something, that program, the Bus for Seniors, one of the most successful programs that the mayor and council did in the last few years.
Okay.
We never had so many people thanking us for that type of service.
I think one of the things we have to keep our eye on, because I don't believe the response we got for the senior picnic or for community night was that overwhelming. When we do these 2 special shopping trips to Christmas, eventually we're going to find out that it either pays to do these extraordinary things or it doesn't. Obviously, we're getting a great response on the daily trips. It may be that, or it may just take some time. I would suggest, doing this for at least a year to get a sense of whether or not
And we agree.
seniors
Yeah.
are going to come around and want to do these. I mean, it's a great,
Yeah.
going to the Closter Mall, which I think is a better trip for the seniors than Garden State. It's closer,
Especially in that car.
So, Dan, please.
To build off the budgetary issue, can we get like a rough mileage
Sure.
estimate so the wear and tear can be adjusted?
Okay.
Okay, we did say foods to school. You want to review the silica dust incident or review that?
Yeah, I mean, the question, or at least as my notes reflected, there was a question as to could or should the building department have issued a stop work order. And I did talk further to our construction official about that. And I think part of it was answered by Councilman Barzalato. I think he confirmed that that wasn't under the purview of the building department, that was an OSHA issue.
So whose purview would that be?
That would be under the purview of the construction official to contact OSHA. But where the process, in this case, the vendor was intermittently complying. So for instance, he got a verbal stop order when the department went out there initially. So he had to stop. He did bring in the wetting equipment, and they were wetting it. But the problem is they weren't doing it consistently. And in the end, I think we heard from the residents that were impacted by it that they took pictures, but the pictures were not usable in that they didn't show anything about what the contractors were actually doing. And that's why he wasn't able to pursue an OSHA stop, because there was no clear documentation of what they were doing.
Are you satisfied that we have a procedure in place so when the building department gets a call like this, it's defined, so right away we know it's not a code enforcement issue, it's the construction officials that should get up there quickly?
They're actually very good, and if you recall, even the letter from the residents who had the concern, they documented the fact that everybody got there. It was just an issue of timing and, quite frankly, the games that were being played by the contractor.
Have we had any, have we sent the contract any sort of, letter indicating that this was an issue and we can't have this in the future, or
Well, no.
some sort of putting them on notice that this is a problem?
No, because quite frankly, we wouldn't notify the contractor, we would have to notify the people who contracted for the work.
Let me ask you, because in my mind, the fact there was dust, the fact there was water or something, it's a bit of a not so consequential. The issue here in my mind is what happens if work of a certain kind spills over to the neighbor? What are the stops or what are the measures that the building construction department take when the work on one property spills over to the other property? And it doesn't matter what, if it's dust, if it's water, so what's the procedure to make sure saying you cannot work till you make sure that you don't disturb that's what I'm trying to understand.
The procedure is that there are clearly defined things that allow a local construction official to stop work. We have stopped work on projects in the past, either because of what was going on at the specific construction site or something that was negatively impacting the resident or a neighbor. The problem we ran into in this case is that UCC doesn't cover the type of problem that was occurring with regard to the
And what
dust.
covers the type of problems that disturbs a neighbor? Which of our ordinance, because I'm sure common sense will tell you that there is something to tell you cannot disturb your neighbor. What covers that? Which one of our organizations would be able to say, okay, I'm sorry, but you have to make sure that you don't disturb
The
your neighbor?
ordinance doesn't talk about disturbing your neighbor. The ordinances, because they're all individual ordinances, mention specific things. A drainage issue, for example, is covered. So if someone is doing work and they're creating a drainage problem, garbage. So it's not just a disturbance or it has to be specific as to what is causing the problem.
Should we have that, something to that effect?
Well,
That
we already do. It
If you
just
read
can't be
our-
general.
If you read our property maintenance
Yeah.
code, if you read our ordinances for construction, you'll see that those things are laid out as well as they can be laid out. There's protection built in there. The real issue is enforcement.
Exactly.
And in this particular case, the level of enforcement was good, but it didn't accomplish what we needed to accomplish. And I think at some point in time, since we can't expect the construction official and the code enforcement official to pass by a house every 10 or 15 minutes, I think at some point in time, we have to use the police as our eyes and ears. We've talked about this for noise and other things, but the police are out there driving around anyway. And to me, that's the answer. I'm not suggesting a cop has to issue a summons, but if he sees something he doesn't like, he can let the building department know.
And our code enforcement people do patrol. They do
Yeah.
patrol and they do catch issues. It's just that it doesn't necessarily mean that we're going to catch 100% of every issue. The other thing that we have
As long as we have a
is-
procedure that does that,
Right.
we okay.
Yes, we do.
That's
We
the
do.
whole idea.
We do. And unfortunately, many times people call after the fact.
Okay.
Okay, that's it.
You
That's
done?
everything, yes.
Okay, let's go to correspondence, please. Okay, we have a notice from Ann Steinfeld, Furstenberg, noticing that some money was donated to the senior center in honor and memory of Barbara Steinfeld. A woman passed away within the last year, and I would assume the senior center will write a thank you note. The next item is two notes from Assemblyman Johnson. If you recall, we sent resolutions to, or actually requests to him. Personally, I'm disappointed. He did not make any sort of a commitment to follow the lead, only that he's going to think about it.
look at it.
I would almost be prepared to say, write back and ask him to think a little harder.
Yeah, well, we're gonna meet him on Sunday, so we're gonna make sure.
What do you, well, but does anybody want to respond to this, or you just leave it in?
I think that we should wait for a week. We're gonna meet Assemblyman Gordon Johnson over the weekend, and maybe we'll report to you what he said about this, and if not, we'll take steps after
Would
that.
you put these letters on the next work session, please, so that we'll get a follow through. Okay, the next is from an attorney, Greg Mueller, who also happens to be a councilman in the next town. And basically, this is a confirmation that the Farleys at 89 Highwood are now coming out strongly opposed to the designation. The only thing that, the only part of the letter that I found interesting was he mentions that Mr. Farley had told us that at previously at these meetings, and to be honest with you, I thought he was kind of on the fence. I listened very carefully to him each time he spoke, and at no point did he say no. Didn't really say yes either. He was just really kind of on the fence. But obviously, we have a letter from his attorney stating that he is opposed to the designation.
Peter,
Yes.
it's interesting when you read some of the details in the letter
Yeah.
about updating the fireplaces, the windows, etc., the heating system. The historic designation doesn't prevent or stop any of this whatsoever
In any way.
in any way.
Well, we know
it's
that
a popular
because
misconception.
we have the pleasure of having a historic railroad station.
Exactly.
And over the last 10 years, we've been in the same position that Mr. Farley may find himself in now.
Right.
Really, Mark, you're going to get a lot of people that say the designation really doesn't have a negative impact. You're going to get other people that say that it does. The only opinions that really count in this story is going to be the opinion of the council
Yep,
and the
agreed.
opinion of the two homeowners.
Right.
And, I think both homeowners have made it clear that they're not supporting the designation at this point. And that's something we have to take into account when we decide what we're going to do.
Yeah, what is also very interesting is the last paragraph, which says those by designating the historic and stuff like that, is they're trying to work out a way to have the property taxes reduced because of the historical designation,
Where does it
as
say
the
that?
conclusion of the letter.
Well, I understand that.
And-
We have seniors that want the same thing, so when we lower the taxes for seniors in historic homes, the rest of us are gonna have to pick it
Yeah,
up.
but it looks
So I'm
like
not
there
sure
is
that's
a
gonna fly.
a misunderstanding to the fact that at this moment in time, there are no tools to do that.
Well, Mr. Mueller's only been a councilman for about 8 years, so maybe he doesn't realize that yet.
Well,
Maybe he's wearing his attorney's hat now.
Yeah, exactly.
I don't, Lisette, I don't think we need to respond to this, do you?
No, she doesn't ask for a
Well, it's
response.
just so noted, so noted. Any questions about the resolutions?
Yes,
Yeah, well, I'm not surprised.
I'm glad. Let me just see. I don't know if there is the new ones or the old ones. I don't have anything about what you're talking about, the consent agenda.
Well, that's what we're talking about.
Okay.
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 So we'll move
So,
forward.
we have,
What?
We do have some
we need to
proposed
remove
changes.
from the consent agenda.
I'm sorry, Susan?
We have to remove from the consent agenda Resolution Q, R17-355. It's a pending project. The grants have been submitted for sections 1 and 2 and approved, but this is a 2018 capital project.
Okay, so Q is off.
And we also have to remove Resolution H, R17-346, and not introduce ordinance 1724. There are some discrepancies in the ordinance.
H,
Which item is, that's,
H.
H is 17-346.
And ordinance 1724.
That's also under H.
No.
Is that a new
No,
business?
it's a new business.
Oh, new business.
Okay,
Hold on.
there is something that I
Let's
wanted
do
to,
business.
there is something I missed, I'm sorry, that I wanted to discuss, which is Resolution S, R17-357.
Yes.
Okay, and it is my personal opinion that I read it very carefully, that it is a bit overpaying for this one. It is by far the most expensive of all the proposal because it is consultative. But if you look at the phase one, you have concept plans and cost estimate $4,000. Up to 60% plan specs and cost estimate, another $4,000. 90 to 100 plan specs and cost estimates, another $4,000. I think that those costs, in my personal opinion, are overstated, and that's what.
Okay, I have suggested to you in the past that when you have a question of this nature, it's better discussed if you go in and see the CFO or the administrator prior to the meeting, where you can have a one-on-one conversation and get a better understanding of what you're objecting to.
I think it's good for everybody to understand.
Well, nobody
those
else has raised the objection except you.
Correct me if I'm wrong, but didn't we decide last time that these are the only qualified contractors?
Yes,
Yes.
but we didn't have a description of the cost. This is the first time that we see every single phase with every single cost, and that's basically brought my question.
We did have the cost.
We have the total cost for $27,000. We didn't have the definition of each one of the items. There was a presentation of all four different presentations, cost submitted, and a decision is to take this one based on a matrix of decisions of what should be done, what should be done. But but we did not have for each one of them the breakdown of the cost.
What exactly would you like to
Yeah,
do, Max?
I would like to take this separately, or we can take it and I'll vote no on this one because I don't understand
So
the
why
cost.
don't we do that? Why don't we just pull it out? We'll have a
Yes.
separate vote on this one.
Exactly.
That's fine.
Thank you.
Right?
Exactly.
That's fine. Okay, we have 3 items that were put on for the good of the order, all by Councilman Bosch.
Yeah.
The first one is the DPW Table of Organization.
Okay.
What do you got to say about that, Max?
It was not exactly the DPW table organization that I asked to. It was, we discussed about the fact that we have open positions at the DPW. And we know that at this moment in time, there are many questions regarding the DPW. Also, we know that unfortunately, Bill is going to be leaving very shortly. And we got,
So is Bob.
Bob, I'm sorry, Bob is going to leave very shortly. Hey, listen, you're going to get rich now that I got you a new name. Bob is going to leave very shortly, and because of that, we're going to bring in a new manager for the DPW. Since we're bringing a new manager, we're going to have to give, in my mind, to give the new manager a chance to look at the organization, decides if he wants to keep this organization or reorganize, and having these openings filled up in the last 2 months or just before he comes in, freezes him any type of capability of being able to restructure and reorganize. So if we have the fact that we're going to have, we should give them the chance to basically hire the people he wants. It's going to be his responsibility to manage those people, and give him a chance to, if he wants to change the position, reorganize, do that, and hire maybe other type of positions that he's going to try to hire to manage the organization.
Are you at all concerned about the ability of the DPW to get their work done?
And that's what we have the capability of hire temporary work for that.
Who told you that?
I looked at the contract. We have the contract to possibility to hire additional people if we need supplemental work where we don't have people on site. And Bob can verify that.
The supplemental work is for seasonal.
Exactly, for the
seasonal employees. You cannot supplement a seasonal for a full-time position.
That's in the contract as
That
well.
is in the contract.
For 2 months, for seasonal, for the leaf racking.
No, Max, you're not understanding.
It violates the contract.
It violates the contract by replacing a full-time employee with a seasonal and/or temporary employee is a violation of the contract.
So,
As long as you're fully staffed and you need the additional help, then we may do so.
So you have this the three people basically not being there for a long time. The last 2 months of the year, I don't think it's going to create more hardship that you had so far in managing the entire DPW.
Yes, it will,
Well,
because now you're
what-
getting into the leaf and snow
Well,
removal season,
let-
Mac, where I need
Yeah, plus
everyone
let's be
present.
clear that all three positions are not, they're all under DPW, but only 2 of them are at the yard. One is here in Buildings and Grounds.
Where are we, just
Custodian.
as a matter of clarification, where are we with the timing for Bob's replacement?
Oh, for my replacement?
Yeah.
Well, we have.
That's a question for Julie.
That's a closed session.
We've had, we have the schedule, you don't have it.
I do have it, I'm just verbalizing the question.
That's
here.
a closed session discussion.
Oh, okay.
What's next, Max?
Okay, the other one is performance appraisals. We did not have a performance appraisal for the people reporting to the council for the 7 years or no, 5 years that I've been in the council. And I think
Seems
that's
like
time. Yeah, I think that's time that we do that because it's important
Who are you referring to?
for Jules specifically.
Oh, so why don't you just say that?
Well, you didn't. I told you. Ask me. I'll tell you who. So I think that we have to, the council, and should be able to after 5 years, to do a performance appraisal, and have like everybody else. I'm sure that everybody else reporting to Joe had this performance appraisal, and basically be online with everybody else.
Sense to me.
It's fine.
Sure.
Is there a
Jewel,
process in
your-
place?
In your experience, how do we go about that process?
Yeah, is there a process in place?
The last time we had the discussion about it, I think what it came down to was that the council as a group didn't feel as though it had enough understanding about what my day-to-day responsibilities were. So I believe that we met with 2 or 3 council people and developed a list of goals that were short, medium, and long-term. I actually have all the documentation from it, as well as
Would you
the reports.
would you put
Was
this
it discussed?
documentation on the next work session?
3 years
And we'll
ago.
discuss it and decide how to go from there. Jewel, all right, what's that?
4 years ago.
Yeah.
That makes sense.
Absolutely. The last one is an issue that the Senior Citizen Committee asked me to bring it to the council, and specifically is related to the fact that we need to create a easier way for the senior citizen to age in place. They don't want to be moved out of their houses. They don't want to have to the hardship. And they quoted the type of programs that are available now in other counties, which is basically the Rockland County. And I copied that program, and it's attached in this letter. Basically, what happens is that in Rockland County, there was an ordinance that allowed each one of the municipalities to decide on a specific income for the senior citizens, and then decide on how much of a tax relief would they give that citizen, specifically because they do not benefit from school programs.
Max, you're referring to the STAR program,
Yeah.
which is not an individual municipal program. It's a statewide program.
It's
And what
a
was-
county program.
No, it's a New York State program.
All right, it's
Okay, Rockland is a county in New York State. And what came out of the senior committee was that you were going to write put together a letter that we were going to send to our state representatives, because this is not
Yeah.
something that we can do at the local level.
But what I want to do is basically have the council agree that I will write a letter, we're going to review it together, and then we can send it to our state representatives. That's the reason I attached the program that is in Rockland County.
That's fine.
Go ahead.
So write the
Write that
letter.
up.
Okay, good, thank you.
You give it to him at the meeting on Sunday.
Can I bring something up for the good of the order? I hope it's in the right
Well,
place.
one other thing, Max, you didn't discuss shared housing. Okay.
Oops, I'm sorry. and I didn't attach the document for shared housing, unfortunately. Let's do it next time so I
Okay.
get to the document.
The response on that was very mixed.
Yeah.
Shared housing, for those that are not familiar with it, is where two people that are not related live together and share the expense of a house. The only problem with that is it's against our zoning regulations. So you have to go back and figure out how to change the zoning, because technically, if a widow is to move into another widow's home, you've got two families there in a single-family home. So there's issues about it. Some towns have created an ordinance, and we'd have to do some research on it. But in all honesty, the response from the members of the committee was very, very mixed. They were very reluctant to give up their privacy. It's an economical thing, but nevertheless, this would require, I think, a lot of study to go figure out how other towns are doing it and how it's working in other towns before we move forward on it.
What I took from that, Peter, was that's not a mandatory program. So 90% of the people said no, but if 10% of the seniors say, yeah, I would help, specifically the lower income will help me.
Right,
Maybe
but we would have to provide a mechanism, an ordinance to in the zoning rules to allow that.
I'm confused about that.
Go ahead, finish,
always
mine is a
interrupting.
different subject. No, go ahead.
I'm confused about something. So we're talking about two senior citizens who want to live together?
Who want it?
Well, it's basically a person living alone.
Right.
They're burdened by the cost of this house.
Right.
They can't afford it anymore. There's another person in the same situation. So they decide one person will move in with the other, and they can share the expense of that house.
Why does anyone need to come to us for
Why
that?
would they ask us?
Well, because
It's a private
I
arrangement?
thought the United States Supreme Court decided that issue a real long time ago.
Decided what?
What?
About family units. Zoning can only address zoning issues like if there are multiple dwelling units, but if two people are living together as a family unit, regardless of their age, the United States Supreme Court decided that issue, I think, in the 1970s.
Said
You can't say no, you can't zone that out.
How could we?
So
I
the
mean,
boyfriend
So what
girlfriend.
does it matter?
I don't understand.
What
the
does
No,
it
no boyfriend,
matter?
two
No,
separate.
it's like a boyfriend girlfriend. So they're two separate. Who cares?
Yeah, that can be a pair, but it's two. They
Why
say
are we bringing this up?
no.
Now
But
it's together,
Tony,
family
listen
unit.
for a second. It's the issue is like that. I have my niece, and I'm taking her with me in your home. Now, basically, because I take care of her, we are both senior citizens, and so do we have to worry about that?
No, I
If
don't
we
think
don't
so.
have to worry,
That's not what the zoning official said.
maybe we should have a conversation with
We
the
can-
zoning official to
well-
tell what our,
Only if they're separate dwelling units.
yeah.
Well,
I don't understand. If a
We get
girlfriend
down-
of
we
mine
get
wanted to
down
stay
to
with
then
me, I would have to ask the council's
precludes-
permission.
anybody, what precludes
That doesn't make sense.
You got all
a
of it.
family moving in with another family, they're not related, in a single-family home.
I live with my wife. We're not related.
So you're saying if I, so you're saying
Very
if,
That's against every premise I've ever understood about zoning.
so if I have to go on with Councilman
Only
Warren's,
family.
that'd be a problem, John?
Anytime. I don't like to hear stuff.
If they
All right,
if they
so-
live together as a family unit,
So Bill,
it's,
We're not gonna go where Curb Your
yeah,
Enthusiasm.
Bill, why don't we clarify with the
Why are we
zoning?
entertaining this
We
nonsense?
clarify with the zoning if there is a restriction,
I don't think
and if there is a restriction, if you two agree that those are gonna be the steps that they need to
Where
take.
is this actually happening? It makes more sense to look at where
Right.
it's taking place.
Okay, well, you know
So what,
what?
if somebody's,
The aging in place now
Heirs.
is a booming industry. It's very big in Teaneck, it's very big in Englewood. We can reach out to them and find out if they're familiar with this at all, and if
and
they
what
are,
they're
how it
doing with
works.
it, yeah.
Shama, you had something?
I had a thing. I think it was sometimes in July, we had members of the garden club come before the council. There was an issue of a butterfly garden, which had been.
Butterfly Garden is at the Nature Center.
No, I think the garden
You're
club
talking about
had
the greenhouse.
the greenhouse, and it had been whacked by mistake, and I think they have sort of replanted
Oh, yeah.
some of the stuff there. And the fear was, I was at a garden club meeting. I've become a member of the garden club, so that's why I know.
Were you there this Monday when they did the Rose Garden, when they talked about the Rose Garden?
Yes, I
I'm
was.
sorry. I'd like you to
So
report on that.
the thing is that there was my suggestion was that in future, if this, so this should not be repeated because you get people, temporary people coming in doing the
Butterfly bush
weeding.
that got weed whacked.
They put a little sign and say, this butterfly garden managed by the garden club. But the members of the garden club told me they wanted to put a sign and were told they couldn't do it because it was not sort of permitted. I don't know why it's not permitted. A small, simple sign saying this so that people would know not to cut anything there without specific, without a specific request being put to them. Why can't they put a little
Are
sign?
you familiar with the, well, you know what?
They haven't heard
You know,
anything about a sign, no request for
this
sign
is
was ever made.
kind of almost like the dust thing. When somebody gets turned down for something like that, why don't they come, there's 7 of us, they could come to one of us, they could come to the administrator, they can come to, you know, I don't know who's told them they can't do it.
Well, they told me, so
No, I'm not
bringing it
denying
up,
that it
yeah.
didn't happen, I just don't, I can't tell you why somebody said they shouldn't do it when I don't know who said it.
Exactly. I don't know who said it either. All I know
If
is
you
I
told
was-
me so-and-so said it, we could ask, you know, Bob could ask
All
why
right,
they said it.
I'll find.
It
I'll
was a
try and
trend.
ask if they know who said it. If not, my question is, can they not just put up a small, very elegant sign saying this
Well,
butterfly
they-
garden
they-
managed by the garden
They
club?
need permission to put signage up, but they should get it from the director of the DPW, not from
Okay,
a
then
laborer or whoever's
Fine.
walking
Then
by at
that's
the
what I
time.
will go back and tell them that put in a formal request
Well, I'm
and
glad that you're a member of the club, because what we need from that club is a much higher level of coordination with the DPW Parks Department. The first ones are gonna tell you that if they wanna do anything positive in the park, it's fine. You know, I stumbled across an old friend of mine, I hadn't seen him in years, working in the park with another person, and I asked what they were doing, and I was surprised to hear that they had planted a whole bunch of stuff there. So the first thing I did is I went to Bob and said, "Are you aware of this?" And he knew, and it's fine. It was an improvement. The garden club can do the same thing, but they can't do it unilaterally. They gotta at least let them know what's going on.
all right, agreed.
All right, I
That's it.
hesitate to say this, but I would entertain a motion to close the work session.
So moved.
Second.
All in favor?
Yes.
Aye.
Do we need a break, or you want to go right into the public
Go right in.
meeting?
Go right in.
Let's do it.
Let's go.
Okay. Public comment in a few minutes.
Oh, I think we're all on.
My comment is.
No, we're going to stay in here.
Oh, we are?
Oh, we're not going? Good. Thank you. Thank you, Mayor.
We're staying.
In compliance with the Open Public
Is there
Meetings
anybody
Act,
inside? Just
I will take a walk after I read this.
Yeah.
Bob's check.
Bob said he'll.
Tomorrow night after.
Thank you.
Oh, thank God.
In compliance with the Open Public Meetings Act, the notice requirements have been satisfied. The meeting dates for the year are confirmed at the annual meeting, are posted on the public bulletin board in the lobby of the Municipal Center, and published in the record within the first 10 days of the new year. Salute to the flag. I pledge
allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Roll call, please.
Councilmember Barzalato?
Here.
Councilmember Bash?
Here.
Councilmember Hayter?
Here.
Councilmember Park?
Here.
Councilmember Zeno?
Here.
Mayor Russell?
Here. I'll entertain a motion to approve the following sets of minutes: September 12th, the work session, the regular meeting, and the closed session.
So moved.
A second?
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Revisions to the agenda, please?
We have a few. On the consent agenda, we're removing items Q and H. That's R 17-305 and 17-346. Removing them to some future date. Also, under new business, we're removing Resolution 17-24, also being removed to a later date. And item S on the consent agenda, that's R 17-357, we're placing under new business.
Okey-doke. Public comments. This is one time we give people in the audience an opportunity to speak about whatever they would like to speak about. Yep. All right, you can go first.
So,
So before you start, just state your name. You don't have to give your street number, but your street address. Your
Belinda
street.
Pastana, I live on Highwood Avenue. And
I'm sorry, I couldn't hear the name.
Belinda Pastana, I live on Highwood Avenue. I have the house next door to the other.
Mr. Farley.
Mr. Farley. I've reviewed the report that the Historic Association provided me regarding the historic importance of my home. Personally, I've read through it, and aside from the architecture being important, looking at some of the other homes that either were used during wars or used for various reasons, I don't see, except for the fact that the Sisson family lived in my home, there's nothing else historic about it, so I am going to look into getting my own historic review of the home to present that I'm not interested in the home being designated as historic.
Okay, thank you. At this
What happens
particular
next?
point in
Yeah.
time, we are scheduled to vote on this, is it October 11th?
No, 24th.
October 24th.
So anything we want
So
to present? we
if you want to present something prior to that, it would make sense that the next meeting is,
The 24th.
The 24th.
no, okay, so try and get something in by the Thursday before that,
Okay.
okay? And the council will obviously take a look at it. Going around this way, sir, you have anything to say? Please.
Sam A. Bruno, 69 Ivy Lane, Tenafly. Was there a joint use committee meeting last week that had an agenda and that any members of the mayor and council of the borough body attended?
You were there, I was there, Dan, you were there, and Jewel Thompson-Chin, our administrator, was there.
Okay, to be certain, this evening I'm here, I'm off duty from that other gig. I'm here as a citizen. I'm not here as in any other capacity. So I want to make certain.
So you weren't at that meeting?
Well, I'm a resident right now, so I'm here as a resident. So is there any report
Yes.
if the mayor and council or any borough administrators attend a joint use committee meeting? Is there any report that's provided at the next available mayor and council session?
This is the next mayor and council session, and normally one of the attendees would give a report as to what took place there.
Had I missed that, I may have come in here.
No, you haven't, we do committee reports
After the news.
after we vote on the consent agenda.
But the public comment is before that.
Correct.
Okay. And usually what is, how strict to the script or the agenda of the joint use committee is that report provided? Does that report at the mayor and council in public session, how closely is that followed?
Well, probably not to your satisfaction. I mean, it really depends on who's giving the report and whether they took serious notes. I don't know what Dan is prepared to talk about.
I left those in my car.
I'm sorry?
I left that in my car.
Well, can somebody give a report so we can find out?
Yes,
right now, or-
somebody will give a report. Dan apparently has notes and he'll give the report.
In the car.
He's going to get it, I think.
Who burned his car?
He's going to get it now.
Did you want to?
What was
Talk about it?
Well, I was hoping to have heard if there was going to be a report, I was hoping to have heard that, and then I would be able to gauge my comments or my questions based upon that. So this is a bit backwards.
So perhaps, Mayor, when we give the report, we can let
We
him
can, yeah,
ask a couple of
invite the
questions for
comments,
clarification.
That works for me.
Yep,
That's fine.
It's fine with me.
that would be most kind and helpful. Thank you very much.
Absolutely.
All right, moving along. Yes, sir.
John Worms, Walnut Drive, and I'm here for a couple of reasons. As the chair of the Environmental Commission and also as a trustee of the Nature Center, I'd like to encourage the council to support the plans for rehabilitating Fister's Pond. I think it's a necessary part of the Nature Center. It's also a necessary part of Tenafly, and there are a lot of birds that are depending on it, and because it's on the migration path.
Did you say birds?
Birds, yes.
Okay.
It's noted for it brings in wildlife aquatic wildlife that there's no other place in Tenafly to go to, so it's important for that, and I urge its support. The other thing is that the Rotary Club is sponsoring the with the participation of the League of Women Voters, is sponsoring Candidates Night tomorrow night at 7:30 in the media room of the Tenafly High School. And we have the moderator will be Sophie Hyman, who is from the league and also a former mayor of Closter, excuse me. And she'll be there, and then the three candidates will also be in attendance. And the three candidates, of course, are Ed Grossman, Lauren Dayton.
Jeff goes.
Jeff Grossman, please.
Just quit while you're ahead, John.
Sorry, Ed Masley.
Bob Colbert. Bill Colbert. No.
It's contagious.
I feel like I just sat through a commercial.
That's what it was.
Maybe these two need to live together.
Anybody else care to speak? Going around just once? Yes.
Just a quick, Ed Maslish, 55 Ivy Lane. I'll see you tomorrow night, Mr. Worms. I don't know if the council has considered this. I want to make a comment about the shared housing ordinance that you guys were discussing a few minutes ago. I don't know if you've discussed it in prior meetings. One thing that occurred to me as I was sitting here is I wonder if you've given any thought to whether it could be a stealth way to bring affordable housing into Tenafly. It might not just be old people that live together, but it could be, groups of, poor families, for instance, that come and live into Tenafly, and how that might affect the neighborhood and the character of the community.
Thank you. Okay, that's it for public comment. Thank you. I'll entertain a motion to approve the consent agenda as amended.
So moved.
Thank you. A second?
Second?
Please call the roll.
Councilmember Barzalato?
Yes.
Councilmember Bash?
Yes.
Councilmember Hader?
Yes.
Councilmember Zina?
Yes.
Okay, we have committee reports.
No, there's separate vote for 17-357.
Well,
Yeah.
that's under new
Yes.
business?
It's a separate,
It's
it's,
separate from
No,
the
I
consent.
understand that, Max. I thought it was under new
We're going
business.
to remove the new business, but doesn't
Would you?
Well,
We usually do
You-
it right after the
Okay,
consent.
that's fine. So, there's two that we're going to, just one that we're going to talk about, and that is R17357, award contract for Sergeant Oresco Park. I believe we discussed it, so
Yeah.
I'll entertain a motion to approve it.
So moved.
A second?
Second.
Please call the roll.
Councilmember Barzalato?
Yes.
Councilmember Bash?
no.
Councilmember Hader?
Yes.
Councilmember Park?
This was for the one pull-aside?
Yes, for the rest of the park.
Yes.
Councilmember Zina?
Yes.
Thank you. May we go to committee reports now? Thank you. Tony, you have anything?
No.
Mark?
Not this evening, no.
Dan?
I could not find my notes.
Ooh.
What? I don't know what they were.
Do you have the agenda handy?
I have the agenda.
If you don't mind. All right, Shama, you have any committee reports?
Yes, I do, Mayor. I attended the Board of Adjustment meeting on Monday, and I'm reporting that there were two new applications for front yard setback. Both houses wanted porticos, so it would be easier for them to, and both were approved. And there was another application which has been adjourned to November the 2nd.
Max, do you have anything?
Yeah, the Senior Citizen Committee met, and we discussed a few very important things. One of them was basically the results of the focus groups that were took place over here. And with few exceptions, the most important issue that was discussed and was raised by the people that attended focus groups was communication. And the communication was one of the issues that probably remained. All the other ones were pretty much taken care of. Since the communication issue was something that they all brought up, we discussed at the table, and both the mayor and Jewel and everybody said, we do have communication basically every quarter. We have the quarter newsletter and everything else. So in order to understand better, I went to the senior center and I talked to a few people over there to understand what exactly they need when they have communication. And they told me if they get a newsletter like this, it's vehicle thefts, good, school crossing, and by the time they get to the wherever it's something about the senior people, they kind of got lost by then. And a week from then, since there were so many issues, they forgot. What they told me that will be the best thing for them, and we can discuss, is a monthly letter specifically addressing the senior citizens issue, which can be reinforcing the messages continuously, specifically bless you, for the senior people. And that's what I wanted to bring into the council as an idea. We also discussed the bus, and the bus was extremely well received. We discussed having a proclamation for some people that are helping the senior center, and I think that we have a proclamation that you're going to be reading, Peter, or we don't have it yet for that.
Proclamation?
For the lady in the Englewood, I forgot.
We don't have yet. No.
All right, well.
We'll have to talk about it.
Yeah, okay. And a lot of thank you for everything that the senior center is doing for the seniors. That's it.
Thank you.
Mayor, can I do an addendum to my report? Something I forgot and was reminded.
And Dan would like to do.
There was a lawsuit against the Board of Adjustment by a neighbor on Norman Place for an approval the board had given. And the good news is that they have withdrawn that lawsuit. So that's something to be happy about.
Certainly.
Good news.
That's what we needed, some good.
Happy neighbors.
So I have a couple of things. One is just to report to you that this past Sunday, the Interfaith Council held a vigil for Las Vegas, the unfortunate thing that happened in Las Vegas. You all got a flyer and should have seen a flyer. I emailed it to everybody. And we had about 60 people, and each member of the clergy spoke. It was very well attended. We got lucky it didn't rain, and they had candles, and it worked out very well. This past Friday, as I had mentioned to you folks at the last meeting, I held a meeting at the skate park with Jamie Cannon, our Director of Recreation. We invited students from the middle school and the high school that had an interest in the skate park to come and tell us, what they thought about the skate park. That coming before us eventually will be the decision as to whether or not to redo the skate park. It's going to be a serious undertaking, and at least in my mind, I wanted to be convinced that there is demand from Tenafly kids to use the skate park. I know that it attracts people from out of town, which is fine. We have nice facilities, and but I wanted to make sure that the majority of the kids that went there were from Tenafly, and listen to some of their suggestions, point out to them that when we originally built the skate park, it was built as a result of a group of young kids coming before us, suggesting they'd like a skate park, forming a group that really pretty much self-policed the facility. And things ran very smoothly, but eventually, as kids do, they aged out of the program. They all graduated and moved on. And there's issues there as far as following the rules for safety perspective, as well as just a lack of following the rules leads to damage to the equipment. So we had a very, very good discussion. Jamie, I think, was very impressed by the number of kids that showed up. I'd say we had about 40 kids come by. Principal Fabo from the middle school was there. He happens to be a real asset to the community, and he knew most of the kids that were there, and his support was greatly appreciated. So at some point in time, we'll pick up this discussion a little further. I just wanted to let you know what happened. Also, there was a mayor's breakfast last week at Whole Foods in Closter. The theme was wellness in Bergen County. There's a lot of stuff going on as far as health and stuff like that. I shared with the Board of Health, and I just wanted to let you know that was happening. Today, we had Bergen County League of Municipalities had a mayor's breakfast, and we met with the Bergen County prosecutor, who brought us up to date on a number of items. We talked about the bail reform, the changes in the bail law. He seems to think it's working well. He talked about but they have 2 roving SWAT teams, one in northern Bergen County, one in southern Bergen County, that provide assistance in a number of ways, not just for SWAT instances. He said the police chief seemed to like this concept, and he also talked about the problems with opiates, etc. The good news, as he put it, from the bail reform is there's less people in jail now. There are some issues because the judges tend to go by the book, and some people, like, they get arrested for opiates from out of state, are let out on bail, never to return, and that's a problem. But generally speaking, the people that are there are getting faster trials. It seems to be working. If there's a negative impact to our municipalities, it's something that he was not familiar with. I know that, as far as I know, Jewel, the chief has never said anything that there's a problem with the system as it works now.
Yes. If you need to, God, it was on my phone.
Oh, okay. Okay, so the joint use meeting. The first item on the agenda was a review of the Board of Ed's drone policy. I brought it up the fact that the JCC now has a drone policy also. For better or worse, we understand why these policies are in place. The question becomes one of enforcement. Basically, and I brought this up to the prosecutor today, police departments are basically not enforcing these rules. They don't have the ability to enforce them. The prosecutor has discouraged police departments from purchasing drones. I believe there's at least one police department that has one now. He is preferring that they don't because of the concern of violation of the Fourth Amendment privacy rules.
SRO.
I'm sorry?
SRO.
Oh, we did talk about the SRO. We got an agreement for another year with the Board of Education. The officer that had been the SRO previously is there again for the next year. Things seem to be working well. We agreed that we're going to review this deal with them in an effort to create more of a long-term policy. Both sides of the street, however, support the program. It's a good program. It's just a matter of getting it where we want it to be. Signage related to no dogs in playgrounds and just signage in general. The question was basically one of enforcement again. And it's private property. We all agree that these rules need to be enforced. And I don't know that we came to any conclusion on that. Did we, Sam?
I'm off duty tonight. I'm here as a resident.
Oh, I thought you were going to jump in. We did discuss the Stillman School Safe Routes to School grant. I think after the discussion we had tonight, I hope the 6 of you understand it better. I certainly understand it better now than I did before, and I think we need to lay it out exactly the same way to the Board of Education so they understand where we are in this.
So on this point, just sort of follow up, so we had the resident who wrote a letter a few weeks ago requesting sidewalks on Hamilton Place, which I happen to agree with the resident. It's very dangerous on Hamilton with only half of it having a sidewalk. But subsequent to that letter, the police chief put up a black radar box on one of the telephone poles on the street. So the police department's monitoring the speed of the traffic there, and he's also able to monitor which way the cars are driving, because Hamilton during the day, during school days, is a one-way street. People come racing down the wrong way sometimes. So the chief's looking at that, and then once we have that data, we'll be able to make a decision about what we should do there. But I just want to reiterate again about the sidewalk. Makes a lot of sense putting it in over there.
Well, we did get a letter from the resident on Hamilton Place. It was an extremely well-written letter, and it basically defined some of the problems there very well. There are problems on Hamilton Place, and the chief is going to review it and make some recommendations.
Just to say, we have sidewalks at the high schools, sidewalks at the middle schools, but this particular elementary school, where we've got little children running around, there's no sidewalks on half the road.
Yeah,
It's a problem.
I think it's a long time in coming.
Yeah.
And that's, in my mind, one of the reasons why, if we turn back this grant, we can get some of this stuff done. If we don't turn back this grant, some of the sidewalks won't get done for, we don't know how long. Okay, there was a recommendation that
That's the other side.
the borough DPW,
Yeah, so don't.
the borough DPW and Buildings and Grounds from the Board of Education work together. There was a recommendation to consider combining the two. I think that, I know the head of Buildings and Grounds was at the meeting. He did not support that. I know that Mr. Culvert does not support that as well. That's not to say they don't support working together. They work together very well. In many cases, beyond the knowledge of us at the table and the table across the street. I think what needs to be done will be to further investigate additional cooperation between the two groups. They share equipment, they share sometimes manpower, but snowplows, both sides of the street are going to need it at the same time. That sort of stuff.
So I just have to I'm sorry I missed this meeting, but my question about that is, what's so complicated about one group of people cutting all the lawns? I mean, it's like such an obvious, picking a very simple thing in terms of sharing that service. About looking at.
I don't think there's anything complicated about one group cutting the lawns. The only problem is there's a lot of lawns, a lot of parks. I mean, we have a certain amount of people that I would guess with the exception of the winter, spends all of their days either maintaining parks or cutting lawns. I'm sure that they have a similar group of people that spend a majority of their working hours, except when they're in the winter, doing exactly the same. So I'm not sure, that we could cut manpower if we just put one group on the project.
Yeah, and I'm not suggesting I have the answer sitting here at the table, but are we going to have like a couple of people in a room trying to think some things through with that?
Well, we have the ability to do whatever we want. If the mayor and council decide we want to investigate this further, we can form a joint committee, beyond the joint use. We can maybe have one or two people from our table, one or two people from their table, meet with their Buildings and Grounds supervisor and Bob Culvert. But I'm telling you right now that Bob Culvert and Tommy Lepore do not support that.
Which is understandable.
Which is understandable.
Yeah,
It's understandable that they will not support it.
Then why are we pushing it?
It's a
Well, I
question.
don't know that we're pushing it. I think it's our fiduciary responsibility to look at, we want things to be as efficient as possible.
Exactly.
We talked
However,
You still want them to be workable.
yeah.
Right,
Well,
so we talk about, I'm not
it's not
suggesting-
workable, it's not efficient.
Right, I'm not saying it's gonna work, Shama. The question becomes, is it worth the conversation? We talked about shared
It's
services all the time.
Always worth a
Is
conversation, I
why
agree
not
with
set up a
that.
meeting and have at least one discussion, and at least we get
That
on the
Well,
table what the problems are.
Come to the next joint use meeting.
So I missed one in 2 years.
Crossing guards. There was some conversation. They've had some. Well, first of all, keep in mind. I know, Mark, you still have a school child. I don't know that anybody else at the table does. They have revamped starting times, and every year you get thoughts from some of the school parents. Why don't we have a crossing guard at such and such an intersection? And to be honest with you, if crossing guards were not an expense, if we could do as many as we wanted, there'd probably be maybe a half a dozen more intersections that we would put crossing guards. Unfortunately, it's not that you put budget ahead of safety, but basically what the police department over the years has done is set up a system where children should be able to get from their home to school, but not crossing unsafe intersections without crossing guards. They may have to walk a block down Engle Street to get to the crossing guard, or a block or two down Knickerbocker. I don't know where all the crossing guards are. There were a couple, battery power is low. There were a couple of suggestions. The police chief is there. I forgot to mention that Rob Chamberlain was there and took notes, and he's going to look at those intersections and decide, basically if somebody says, why isn't there a crossing guard at such an intersection, it's the police that decide whether it's warranted or not.
And the other two items, I think.
I know this is probably was
I lost
discussed
it.
before I joined the council, but this is a service that we provide for the schools and we provide for the kids in town. Shouldn't that be a shared cost between the Board of Ed and the municipality?
No.
No?
No, because the crossing guards work under the auspices of the police department. They don't work,
Yeah, it's a public safety issue.
They can't serve two masters.
That was the other two, that was the
What was
last
the last
thing.
thing?
The TVAC and fire department, it was deferred till the next meeting.
But the question was not if they work under and who's they work under. Like our police officer that's in school works under the auspices of the police department, and there is a shared cost for that because it's dedicated to the schools. And the fact that the crossing guards are also dedicated, without exception, to the school kids, shouldn't that be a shared cost? I didn't say responsibilities.
Right.
But shouldn't be that pretty much the same thing?
They're not just used for school. They're used for other borough activities.
If they are used, that's where we can we can put the cost for us.
Also, Max, you have to remember this: the kids don't all go to Tenafly Public Schools. You have kids going to walking to Mount Carmel. You have people. The crossing guards are out there with people walking to the bus. So there's a lot more than just. I mean, the majority of it's the school kids, clearly.
Yeah.
But it's kind of like, yeah, it's such a busy time, and it's such a direct public safety issue.
Okay, just, we have a citizen over here that might want to add something.
Okay, this citizen.
Thank you, Mayor and Council, for having rearranged the schedule or the batting order on this particular report, and thank you, Peter, for your attempt to provide a report on that meeting. Greatly appreciated. As a citizen, I just have a simple question, and hopefully I can frame it correctly. And I'm not looking for an answer at this moment or this evening. I'm just putting a question out there. Would the council, would the mayor and council consider having a conversation amongst itself, with itself, regarding a possible study of the advantages and disadvantages, the merits, the opportunities, the upside and the downside of looking at both its DPW and parks and finding commonality between that and the school district's Buildings and Grounds Department. I want to be very certain, so I'm going to sit up here. I am not asking or suggesting there be any merger. I am not suggesting or asking that people change their uniforms tomorrow. My simple question is there an interest amongst this elected body to have that conversation if it might be interested in looking at that potential change? Bill, am I clear on that?
I think I understand what you're saying.
So I'm not telling and I'm not demanding.
Right.
I'm asking a question, delivering it over to the mayor and council to determine if there might be any interest to talk about, what I think the buzzword is synergy.
Efficiencies.
That's all. I'm not advocating that is a financial, a fiscally correct move or a culturally correct move in terms of the borough and the school district. And again, emphasis, I'm here as a private citizen. So that's my question. Not looking for an answer, and whether it goes anywhere or not. But again, it's not about Okay, I'm sorry. Councilman, did you have a
Yes.
question for me?
Can you switch hats to your Board of Ed hat?
Absolutely not. I'm here as a
How
private
big is
citizen
How
tonight.
big is that department, buildings and grounds?
You'll have to speak to the administration who are responsible for the administration and management
Good
of the
answer.
school district.
Okay, thank you. You did it?
Good? Thank you. Good. Thank you all.
They are.
Okay, new business. Are you going to read those?
Yes, I just need someone to motion and introduce 1718 through 1723.
Thank you.
Are we gonna read each one of them and discuss each one of them?
Once I read them before doing roll call, they could be any one of these.
Because I would like to discuss one specifically, the 17-19,
The open space.
the open space one.
It could be discussed before introducing it.
What's the procedure? You tell us the procedure so we
You could
can...
discuss it before introducing it.
Okay.
So go ahead, what's your question?
Okay, so the 17-19 is something that we discussed that's basically appropriate in 661,000 from the municipality. But what we also agreed is that what we approved to be spent is the first part of that one, which is the $50,000. And each one of the sections will come through a vote over here to approve.
That's still
In the
gonna happen.
resolution,
It's still
excuse
gonna
me,
happen.
just, in the resolution, it's just basically saying the total amount is approved. It doesn't say anything about each one of the expenses will come in for to be specifically approved.
Okay, well, what the ordinance does is approves encumbering, setting that money aside, but each time there's an expense, that would be part of the bill list. So before it comes to the bill list, it could be brought up to council as in a work session, but any expense, whether it's like the 50,000 for the first phase, that would be on the bill list. You approve it, once you approve it, then it's taken out of that account.
Okay, so there
And
is
then
a
the next-
procedure that
Yes.
each one, okay, thank you.
Okay, but hold on, don't we need to do a public hearing
Yeah.
The public hearing is at the next meeting,
on the whole 661?
yes.
Okay, but we still would need, we would need to approve any parts of that 661.
Council approves it once the expenditure is listed for a bill list.
Yeah, but that's before it gets paid, right? But it's after
Before it gets paid.
but it's after it's encumbered, right?
We
So
need
in
to-
other words, when it's
That's
on the
right.
bill list, it's already been done. We're just approving payment for it.
That's right.
The question becomes, do we have an opportunity to approve it prior to it being done?
Exactly.
Well, once, well,
Isn't
the only
this
thing I
all
can
going out
suggest,
for public bid?
Yeah, wouldn't that be part of the bid process?
No,
it's
but
an
it's,
item-
if it goes
not
out,
everything-
we just approve the bidder.
Let's that answer.
Well, whoever would put in the requisition could be brought forth to council before it gets to the bill list level. You guys could decide the piecemeal approval procedure.
Well, when you say could be, I mean, you know, I
Can I
think,
ask the question a different way, similar?
That's a
So,
decision you have to make as
Can I
a
ask you-
body. All you're doing now is just setting.
well,
the
no,
budget.
it sounds to me that that the ability to spend up to $661,000 is what's being approved.
Exactly.
Yeah.
It doesn't sound to me that we have the opportunity to say no to any part of that prior to it being done.
We do, because this is just an earmarking. So that way, if some other project comes down the road, you know, all right, the open space fund has this balance, but keep in mind, this amount has been set aside. So you are really working with X as a balance.
Well,
Think of it as the capital,
Yeah.
okay? Even though there's a grant, even though there's a budget that's approved, we still have to come with a resolution for each individual item
But is
Right.
after or before?
before.
That's the question.
Well, that means-
So can we say something in the
no, you
resolution?
don't have, Max, you don't have to say
It's not a
anything.
resolution, it's an ordinance.
That's the process,
The ordinance is just a basic template for appropriating open space. It's the same whether, the only thing that changes is the amount and what the project's for.
So if there's a section which is X amount and we don't want to approve it,
That comes to you as a resolution. So if something comes down the pike for $100,000 for a certain phase, like repairing the dam, you could say, well, we're not ready to spend this, or we should go out to bid, or we should do something different. So we're not going to approve releasing the funds for that portion.
So it'll be on the consent agenda.
Yes.
Yes.
So these are, anytime any of the
Basically, we
661 is going to be
spend all the money.
spent,
That's what
Any-
we want.
Shama, anytime any part of the 661 is going to be spent, a resolution saying we're gonna spend X number of dollars on such and such out of the 661 will come before us. If we don't approve it, it doesn't get done.
Exactly.
If we approve it, then it gets done, and then it's on the bill list. So that's the process. So we do have the ability to say no to any part of that 661.
Just like Jewel had mentioned with capital items, those resolutions for the capital items, it references, it comes out of the capital budget or a bond ordinance that was adopted.
It would be the same thing with the artificial turf, whether it's open space money or a capital expense. We approve doing it, but before it goes forward, it would be on a resolution saying it's time to do it.
We're in essence
Yeah.
approving a
So
source,
Exactly.
not the actual
All right,
expenditure.
Okay.
I'm satisfied
I'm
with
sorry,
the,
what did you say?
I said we
with
were
the
approving a
explanation.
source for the funds.
Right.
Okay.
Not each expense.
So the
So where
661
are we
is
on
the
this?
funding
Where
source.
are we on this? Let's say.
Introducing the ordinances.
So we need a motion,
I need a motion to introduce the ordinances listed except for the last one.
Tom? So move.
So moved.
Second,
Second.
please call the roll.
Okay. Following ordinances are introduced and passed on first reading and October 24th, 2017 at 8 p.m. is the hearing for the following ordinances. Ordinance number 17-18, an ordinance to amend and supplement Chapter 26 of the Revised General Ordinances of the Borough of Tenafly entitled Trees. Ordinance number 17-19, an ordinance appropriating up to $661,000 from the Municipal Space Recreation and Historic Preservation Trust Fund of the Borough of Tenafly. Ordinance number 7-20, an ordinance to amend section 13-16.6 of Chapter 3 Borough Regulations entitled Violations and Penalties of the Revised General Ordinances of the Borough of Tenafly. Ordinance number 17-21, an ordinance to amend Chapter 21 entitled Parks, Playgrounds, and Recreation Areas of the Revised General Ordinances of the Borough of Tenafly in order to prohibit dogs in children's playground areas. Ordinance number 17-22, an ordinance to amend the fee schedule, Section 10-1.3 of the Revised General Ordinances of the Borough of Tenafly entitled Construction Code Fees. Ordinance number 17-23, bond ordinance providing for the Tennekill Tenafly Swim Club parking lot paving project by the Borough of Tenafly and appropriating $400,000 therefore, and authorizing the issuance of $380,000 bonds or notes of the borough to finance part of the cost thereof. Councilmember Barzalato.
No on 1721, yes on the rest.
Councilmember Bash.
Yes.
Councilmember Hayter.
Yes.
Councilmember Park.
Yes.
Councilmember Zena.
Yes.
Okay. I guess that's it, and we have a closed session tonight?
Some remarks from you, Mayor?
Do you really want to hear me say anything?
No,
else?
no, it's just listed over
We
there.
appreciate your-
fair of you, man.
I appreciate your thoughts.
We're done with committee reports?
Yes. We're done with everything, just read the closed session.
Sure.
We'll take a 5-minute break before we go to closed session, but first,
Well, we have to, we're gonna read it?